Great. Well, I am so excited because it is officially time for us to launch our juvenile justice toolkit titled Reimagining Youth Justice: How Faith Leaders Can Be Involved. This was a toolkit that was created in partnership with Community Connections for Youth. I'm so excited to invite Belinda Ramos, who is with Community Connections for Youth, to join us to walk us through this toolkit. Belinda is such honestly, personally, it's just been such a joy to work with. And I'm so thankful for her and all the things that this toolkit is bringing. The goal here really is for it to provide practical resources for understanding juvenile justice for churches, small groups, families, and individuals. This toolkit will help walk readers through the background, current problems, and potential solutions to the incarceration system in the United States right now. So, Belinda, welcome. Would you please, start us off and talk to us a little bit about this toolkit?
Awesome. Good afternoon, everyone. I am just so thrilled to be showcasing this toolkit today. So my name is Belinda Ramos. I am the executive director at Community Connections for Youth in the South Bronx. And I've been working with Reverend Ruben Austria, who is our founder and key developer of this toolkit for the last 10 years. And I want to just, he's not able to be here, for this, but I just want to lift him up because this really is a dream come true, I think, for him specifically. I have, when I met Ruben, I grew up in church. So I'm just going to give a little background. I grew up in church and I've had a lot of issues along the way. And I think it was a real comfort to see somebody that I respected align their faith, their view of social justice, and their execution of that work in a way that felt really, really comforting, to me. And in working with him, bringing me into the fold of meeting folks such as those represented on this call was a place of rest, for me and my own faith. And so to see, somebody who had a true vision for the role that a church can play in advocating for young people. I am a sister of a formerly incarcerated individual. My brother has been was in the system since he was 14 years old, and it broke apart our family. And I am also a product who is had to survive her own, or had to break out of her own survivor's guilt, because I was deeply embedded in a community of people who loved me, believed in me when I felt abandoned and unsure, and didn't know how to direct these deeply negative feelings that were ready to hijack me at any moment. And so, of course, those things manifest into decisions that we make as young people. And so when you compare these two things, I felt a tremendous survivor's guilt for what the church, and I don't want to say the church collective, the specific people at my church they were community to me, they were supportive to me, what it would have meant for him if he had had the same thing. And so, Ruben had put this toolkit together, and I assisted him in putting this together as a resource for church. Yes, to learn to advocate and what are the first and primary steps that you can be taking, but also to help bring an understanding about the root issues and problems that and where the help starts to come in on. Oftentimes, what I have seen is there are lots of churches who want to address the issue of those who are incarcerated, and that's often taken the form of visiting folks in prison or doing prison ministry. And that's a positive thing. That's a beautiful thing. I've been involved in those types of things. My start back from college, I've been, visiting young people in detention centers for a few years, running a ministry there, just showing love to young people. But I think that there is so much more because, when you think about what the full stretch of the arm is, to really understand the systemic problem that we're dealing with, to really understand what true advocacy looks like. So there are other fruits on the tree that are not being picked here. And that the churches don't often know how to build a bridge to accomplish these things. First, there's not a paradigm for it. Second of all, there's just not been real clear resources to engage folks in the whole of the conversation from what the issue is at hand. Folks are often either they're doing this on their own time or they have the experience or this is just something in their wheelhouse. But there's a lot of people left out of the conversation to really understand that this is more than just what young people have done wrong or the decisions that they made, but there are structural issues that really land them in a predicament that only increases self-harm and harm to others. So we wanted to put something together that could bridge the theological underpinning of why doing this work, presents an idea of like what the conditions are that most people kind of have this loose knowing, and the information is really large, and unless you're accessing it yourself, you're going to feel like you may need to be some type of expert. So this toolkit is really set to help people do some deep dives into what the cost of incarceration. That alone, is a very eye-opening thing. The relationship between those costs, how money could be used, using imagination to think about what accessing millions of dollars, billions of dollars that go into this industrial complex that, we are up against and what that could mean. And so I feel that churches have often sat out of these conversations because, and that's not to say that churches across America, there are many people doing amazing work and loving people, but to have a resource and for everyday groups to be able to have conversations around these topics, and then also steps towards doing some real advocacy for young people. Like Clinton said, will you be there for me? How can you be there for them? And so, when you think about the resource that a church is in a community in New York City, there are as many churches as there are Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts. Large, small, they're everywhere. And when you think about the invitation to join the fold on a monumental problem that we have in the United States around mass incarceration and how that's impacting young people and the racial issues that are attached to all of these things, I think about us as an amazing army showing up and becoming presence to young people and being a presence to advocate for the things that need to change on their behalf, that we're not just putting the problem on them. I had a conversation. I was traveling recently, and I just want to just touch on to kind of what Clinton and Greg were talking about in the earlier session. Anytime I travel, I'll sit somewhere that's, at a bar and order food. And there's always a conversation like, what do you do? And I love that conversation. I'm here for it because it's always an opportunity for me to educate the everyday person about the conditions that folks are facing. And for the most part, people want to see young people doing good, right? A gentleman I was speaking to, I was, giving him some examples of some of the ways that young people get caught up in the system over very small things that have lifetime ramifications. And he says to me, I just want to see them do right. I just want to see them do good. And I guess under that circumstance, my question is, whose problem is that? Is it the young person's problem to create a new set of decisions so that their life can change, or is this all our problem? And so, so as the late great James Baldwin says, right, like these are all our children, and we will profit or pay for whatever they become. When churches can get and see that this isn't about an us and them, but this is all our problem, it could be a revolutionary thing because there are so many churches and a desire to affect change. There are people that are ready to go. And so today I have the privilege of, unveiling a toolkit that it's not going to cover it all, but what I do think is going to be a great in 43 pages, a crash course on the justice system, a paradigm, a Christian paradigm, specifically on why, on oppression and this work, and a vision for young people that's from a strengths-based view, an understanding of the social conditions that are impacting them, and some examples, stories, and some practical tools to begin conversation. And so we are super excited, to showcase this. It's really a labor of love. And a desire really to bring more churches into the fold. I know I am preaching to the choir in the room. But as you get access to this, I know everyone here has a level of influence with others. And to see something like this be utilized to create dialogue is an exciting thing, for us. So Matt, I guess I could go ahead and just broadcast here first. Just give me a second. I'm going to share this on my screen here. Okay. Can everybody see this?
Yes, I can see
Nice,
that. Looks
looking
great.
good. Okay, I can make this a little bit larger here. So the name of the toolkit is Reimagining Youth Justice, How Faith-Based Leaders Can Get Involved. And we call this a toolkit because it's highly interactive, and you can do this alone. But the way we have structured it is to also do this in groups and to engage in what collective learning can bring about and dialogue can bring about. We try to make it as unscary as possible. I think sometimes some of these conversations in church circles can bring about a lot of debate. We try to make these things an undebatable issue about where God's heart is, who he loves, and what he wants to see accomplished, and using stories from specifically the Miriam message, which is something that Ruben has, like his own vision, has come from this idea of the saving work of what Miriam did, for Moses and for a people group, right? And so here we have this toolkit that accomplishes that. So the toolkit is broken up into 3 sections. We have this introduction here, and it's visual and not overwhelming, but the 3 sections are this. Section 1 is on concern, and it's really about what does God care about, and how does he care about suffering and injustice. And so we're using the narrative of Israel in Egypt and oppression and social structures to introduce the conversation around some critical things that we even see now, You'll be able to build that bridge about, what these concerns are and what the conditions are of oppression and how justice is used to bring about oppression. Section 2 is around the intervention. So here, how can you know about what's actually going on? And this is, like I was explaining, often folks don't really know the conditions. It stops at what they see in their communities. It stops at what's in front of them, and they don't understand always the larger context and where their place is in all of this. So I think this is one of the more eye-opening parts of this toolkit that allows people to kind of sit with the conditions, the work folks are doing out there, and practical tools for, taking steps around, addressing these issues. And then lastly, we have the section on liberation. What is God's heart for justice? What is his desire for peace for all people? And what are the natural resources that are among you that you can begin to bring forward? So I'm just going to walk through here just to give you examples here. So here you're going to see we're using scripture, we are using storytelling, but also real life applications through the toolkit, so that folks are able to, to think about how this gets carried out in the everyday. So here are some of the things on the dynamics of oppression, racial and ethnic disparities. One thing that I want to show you here, that in the midst of a section, you're able to do, an exercise. What are the relative rates of incarceration in your state for youth of color? Using the Burns Institute United States of Disparities website, find the following information for your state. Again, this is something you can do on your own, but imagine taking this level of activity to understand how this all relates to racial justice, how this all relates, to the bigger picture of solving the issue and creating alternatives to incarceration and the role that churches can play. Here is another example. How much does it cost to incarcerate children in the United States? And so what we've pulled together is, resources from many folks who have done research, who have been, paying attention to, to what costs are, what folks are doing out there. And we try to bring all of these resources to you in a tangible way around discussion. How can people of faith take part in the active watching on behalf of young people in the justice system? So we start to begin to give steps just around observation. before we're getting to the point of like what you can be doing as a church, as a group, or how you can mobilize members. First, this is around how can you get people to pay attention to what the parts of this that need to be noticed? How can the congregation understand what what the current state of the justice system is? What our alternatives to incarceration are about? What is that dream? What about court proceedings and where can they can observe? Because once you're getting closer to these spaces, I mean, obviously people have a lot of aha moments visiting a facility, seeing, young people being locked up, what it's like seeing the face of a young person in that condition. And that can light things up, for people. But court is another space for folks to understand, like, wow, that light starts going off. That's just saying this is more than just displacing the problem. And we're not saying that young people don't need guidance, that they haven't, that there aren't, there's youthful misbehavior that's at play here. But again, that is only part of the picture. How are things playing out for young people that is not doing justice to them, that is not lifting them up, that is not looking at them through the lens of love and care and what they deserve? So we give you some step-by-steps here, supporting members of your own congregation. I think this is one of the things that the toolkit hits home on. When I shared this idea about us and who's this problem, I think the first thing that we want to say, and that is critical, is that before we decide that this is an issue that's happening outside of a congregation, it's first realizing that within your own congregation, there are families and young people who are facing court involvement, who are facing issues with systems. And it's often very and highly stigmatized. It's stigmatized amongst family members. I know that that was a situation, for me and for us in our family. My brother's issues with the justice system isolated him, from the rest of the family. And, we have, stories of this whole idea of black sheep and things like that. And so your first line of opportunity are the young people that are in your congregation, or the parents and families that are in your congregation that could use your support. And one thing that this toolkit can and will accomplish is giving you steps for concrete support. Like what are specific things that are low hanging fruit that can be accomplished through your advocacy, through your presence, through your love, through your care, that doesn't take you into needing to become an expert, a civil rights lawyer, or any, activist, but just simply neighbor loving neighbor and having an investment in speaking up on behalf of somebody who cannot speak up for themselves in these settings. So we get into some of that about supporting members of the church. And I just want to highlight this. I'm not going to go through every section, but through the toolkit, you'll see essential questions for, wrestling with some of these things that are shown. We also give some of the natural reactions that folks have, around these issues, like what comes up for folks under court observation. How do you even begin to get into courts? Visiting detention centers, we talked about that, and I see that a lot of churches have some experience with prison ministry, and that's great. And we want to continue to say, like, listen, young people need visits. There are young people that can go without a single visit. These are essential when building relationships. And, for us and our organization, this is about building a connection into the community. That does not have to happen when a young person comes home. That can be happening from where they are. And there are advocacies and steps that you can take and relationship building that you can have with systems who will allow you in, who will allow you to show love, to show concern to young people and build bridges so that they're able to be connected outside. And it is more than just connecting them to you as a church, but creating a web of caring adults, because those are the main factors for young people. The number one things they're going to need and contribute to their own self-actualizing is relationship with caring adults, and the opportunity for engaging in positive activities. And so that is not anything that is far out of the reach for any church or community of faith. We have group discussion questions at the end of each section. Again, if you're doing this in a group setting, this can be accomplished. So we go into the intervention section, and we talk about the strengths-based view of how to view the justice system, and how the justice system really pits young people from a deficit base, and how we can come in from a strengths-based lens. Nobody wants to be, there is no hope in attaching or in labeling someone as a problem. That is not, that's not the entry point. And if we see this as a problem that we all have about the social conditions, we much less see youth, as the ones to label and to fix them and to try to do all of these things, but to truly extract the strengths that are really under the rubble of all of these conditions, and all of these, social conditions, all of these life circumstances, traumas that sit underneath there that we want to extract. So we want to give a strengths-based view of how to approach these, and using, again, the story of Moses and Miriam, his sister, and the work that she did and what she did to save her brother. I want to move over. So here, we give you an example here of letters of support from clergy. Letters of support can go a really, really long way. Youth in families or youth can go into court proceedings with no one on their side, right? Aside from, a public defender or, somebody there, that's part of the system, but no one showing up from them from the community. When I think I just keep going back to those words that Clinton, reminded us of, will you be there? That powerful idea of somebody being by your side through one of the scariest and darkest moments of your life is one of the most magnificent things that you can do for a young person. And so that can mean the difference between a life of deeper system involvement or a life of thriving community for that young person. Opportunities, to be in the center of the best parts of their community. And so what we want to do here is offer you an example and how to approach writing a letter to the court on behalf of a young person. Again, this is low-hanging fruit and achievable. And here we show you an example of the do's and don'ts of writing a letter if you have a program in your church, and how to do that. And then what are the best practices in doing that? Because obviously, you don't want to paint a picture that's not true. You don't want to make promises that you can't meet, and you don't want to put yourself in a predicament that is just outside of what's really within your wheelhouse. So we give practical guidance to, church members and communities of faith, how to testify in court. That's not always a comfortable space, and not everybody is ready to do that. But, and you don't have to worry about something like going like, you're going to be cross-examined. This is an opportunity for somebody in the community to speak on youth's behalf in a way that no report is going to be able to speak about them, right? When you read a case, it's always going to be around what went wrong, what they did wrong, and all the reasons, why the court needs to be paying attention to this behavior. Who is going to speak on behalf of youth as an asset? Who is going to be there to speak as youth who has people by their side? These are the things that courts and judges often want to see, right? Who is going to be there? Because they're not going to be on the hook, for making sure that if you're advocating for them to be in the community, that then they will be unresourced to live successfully in the community and be appropriately supported around them. So we give tips on doing that. What is life after court? So life after court here is around connecting them to all the resources that are out there. Obviously, churches can do a lot. You can put together groups, and you can, put together activities, or you can join what's out there in your community that you may not know about that is actively engaging young people. And so what we wanted to do was give a breakdown of some of the opportunities as a whole and as a practice of what to look for. So things like positive youth programs with positive youth development models that are competent and able to, build in youth leadership, build in youth voice, build in a sense of belonging, all integral, to the development and the self-actualizing of young people. A breakdown of what credible messenger work is, for those with lived experience who have, this is again showing one of the most positive and highly effectual impacts in the lives of young people, folks with lived experience who understand what young people are going through, who can communicate with them, who have the credibility and the authenticity to be able to draw close and address and be there and show love for young people in a supportive way. Family support programs, for us, at our organization, an evaluation of one of our programs, the success of the young people, the best success was highly tethered to the support that parents got. Our program really has parent coaches, parents who have faced the system along with their child and have navigated the chaotic, often lies and misleadings that often happen. So we have parents who have the experience to guide them. So these are some of the opportunities that are out there that don't need to be disconnected from the church, but in all unity, we can all be playing a part in supporting this monumental task, right? Education opportunities, employment training, and case management. Here you'll have, again, some series of activities and exercises for you to think about how you can go about finding out who is this point of contact. Obviously, this is a small sheet of paper. You can write this here, but you can also just use this as a paradigm and something to develop out. We do get into the idea, I think this was touched on earlier, I think Greg had mentioned this, just the idea of like, proselytizing and using these things. I think that's a coaching that often sometimes churches need to have. I think when folks have had very transformative experiences under faith, you want to share those and may use this, or folks may use this as an opportunity to share this faith, but that's not what we're here to do. That could be an outcome. I'm not going to say that that might not be an outcome if a young person is interested or if a young person is asking, but we are doing this work truly for love's sake and love's sake alone, right? And to say, like, we're going to meet young people where they are, guide them in the path that they feel like they are in, because that is the ultimate sense of autonomy that we want to build into them. If we're dealing with a system that disempowers youth, how can we allow young people to take their own power steps in their life and discover who it is who they are? That's the positive relationship that bridges and allows young people to ask about you. But our goal here is to help folks from communities of faith understand how to navigate that. Because obviously, at least for me in church, it's always been about, oh, you need to share this, you need to share, you need to share about your life with God or your salvation or things like that. And so being able to, to separate that apart for folks to understand why it's important to not do that is a critical piece of what we're broadcasting here. So last is the liberation aspect. And again, we're, looking at this story in the Bible about the liberation of an oppressed people and some parables to get us through this. But we're tying up this end to say, this is the vision that we have for true liberation. We had this little debate about like whether it's freedom or liberation, but it's, it's really like setting young people who are captive, free, right? Captive because of the way our system is set up, the way, racial injustice and the oppression has worked out in this country that has ensnared young people, is really waiting for them to be born, in order to feed it. And so when folks become aware at certain levels as to the background picture of all of this, we really do believe that they can be ignited to see this from a different point of view and really almost change their whole paradigm, even in how they're addressing young people, which is often from, you got yourself in trouble and we're trying to get you to stop being in trouble, right? We have to do that for all young people, regardless of race, ethnicity, country. Young people are going to do the things, young people are going to young people, right? And so our guidance really is to see them for the beautiful, precious, purposeful beings that they are, and see their lives transform as a result of watering them in this way. We do connect folks to the advocacy that is happening there. Again, for us, this toolkit is not just around how you can support youth. Those are really practical steps. But when you think about the monumental problem, what can you be doing as folks, the light starts turning on for folks when you're in court and you start getting deeper into how these things play out, you're going to want to address the issue. It's going to be difficult to just all of a sudden pretend that you didn't see what you just saw. And so we want to channel folks and direct folks to a lot of work that folks are, doing out there, and how you can connect to, to advocacy movements, to civil rights movements and human rights organizations that are set to address these issues in the larger context. We build in here success stories of states that have, been successful at shutting down prisons, what the alternatives are. Folks don't always know, right? When you say, let's defund this, or let's shut this down, that there's nothing on the other end in answer to, right? Where no one's talking about a lack of accountability, but we're talking about beautiful, loving accountability that can happen at the hands of people who love, as opposed to a crime and punishment system that seeks to destroy your life. So we are, we're presenting facts, presenting numbers. And, but, by the end of this, we hope that you're able to engage in meaningful discussion, but also take practical steps for how you can mobilize the people within your wheelhouse, or even other churches, for moving things forward and really changing the game. People of faith are needed in the fold. Like I said, when I think about the amount of churches that are out there, on any given block and in any given community, the influence the church has in this country, with the right information in their hands and the right kind of conversations, and a solid paradigm of faith, to be able to push and land people in a way where they can confidently move and understand why they're doing this. I really do believe that that could result into what you were talking about, Maddie, right? Like that ultimate goal that we all have, to seeing the end of youth punishment and incarceration, and seeing the liberation of young people, and really raising them up and investing in them in a way that we have invested into the most ineffective system that we have going on right now, called the justice system, that is sitting on lots and lots of money that can be used to really water the ground for young people. And so I'm going to come off screen here, but we are, excited to share with you. Maddie, I'll turn it over to you about how you can access this.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Belinda. And yeah, absolutely would just love to give Ruben another shout out for the amazing work he did on this. I, you know, this toolkit really just emphasizes so many things that have already been talked about this morning, just in the importance of showing up, being consistent, using the resources that you have. And I would like to echo what Belinda just said about churches have so much influence in this country, and the ability to use that influence is a gift when it comes to helping out juveniles and supporting children. And so, yes, everyone who has registered for this convening will get a follow-up email, which will have the toolkit linked to it in a PDF form. It's not currently available on the Center for Public Justice website, but it will be available on there shortly. And we hope that you share it with everyone that you can, anyone that you think it could be a good resource for, even if they themselves are not a faith-based leader, but they might have someone who they could think of that really needed it. It's a great touch point for someone who doesn't know much about what's going on. Belinda, I love that you talked about how fun it is when people ask you your job, because I kind of have a similar thing where sometimes we'll be like, what do you mean juvenile justice? Like, what's happening with juveniles in America? And I'm like, oh, let's talk about it. And so I think it's a great place to start. It's, you can be in small groups just in your church, but think about how truly powerful it would be if a Bible study or a small group walked through this together, and even just did one or two of the suggestions that are listed in there as possible places that they can be strong advocates for children in their community. So yeah, we hope that you will share it with your connections, your networks. We hope that you will yourself will read through it, see some of the resources there, and yeah, we really do just hope it's a gift to your organizations and to your churches